Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, Principal Atmospheric Scientist at Nutrient Ag Solutions, and I want to thank you for watching this weekly Ag Weather Update brought to you by the Farm Credit Associations of North Carolina. We begin by taking a look at the last 3 days of total accumulated precipitation here, and while we did see some widely scattered showers and storms across much of the Carolinas here, it was nothing like we saw earlier in the week with some of the severe weather that rolled through. I'll show you that in just a few minutes. But overall, I want to take a look at the latest drought monitor, which was released last Thursday, because we can see here going through the middle of August here, we do have some patchy drought that's still hanging on in the southeastern quadrants and right there along the coast in North Carolina. What's more important to see about this is just what happens when I kind of show you the change. So this is looking at the 1 month drought monitor class change, and this is just looking over the last month. And we can see that much of North Carolina, we've seen either no change or even in some locations a 1 class improvement, while it's been patchy through other parts of the cotton and peanut belt getting down there into parts of South Carolina, Georgia, and Mississippi. Where we've seen major drought development has certainly been down here in parts of Texas and Oklahoma, especially western Oklahoma. And the drought that you see right in through here, well, there's a lot of heavy rain that's moved through this area just recently. So you corn and soybean farmers in North Carolina understand that parts of Iowa, Illinois, Indiana have just recently got quite a bit of rainfall. Now, just to show you what some of those storms look like middle of the week last week, we had a frontal boundary that pushed through, and you can see that as they came through, some of the storms that blew up here produced some incredibly heavy rainfall and some locally very strong winds as they came through. And the big question I want to answer for you this week is, do we have anything like this happening again? What would its timing be? And is there anything to be watching out of the tropics? Let's go to the tropics first. There are a few things to be paying close attention to. Just right now, off of the southeastern coast of North and South Carolina, we do have a tropical disturbance that is forecast to parallel the east coast of the United States on its way toward Nova Scotia, potentially up toward Newfoundland, or maybe over here into New Brunswick. The uncertainty is pretty high once we get out past about the next 3 or 4 days. But the bigger story for us is going to be what happens with Dorian. So Dorian right now is a tropical storm, and it is forecast to move right along this direction. And we need to understand what are the major players at work to see if Dorian will eventually maybe impact the Carolina coast with time here. So to take a look at what's going on right now on satellite, let's focus primarily on Dorian, and that is because the tropical thunderstorms that you see off the southeast coast of the United States, while they're quite powerful, very disorganized, no clear low-level circulation, and like we said, they're forecast to move away from the United States. So let's keep a close eye right here to see what happens. Now, currently early this morning, I could tell that Dorian was ingesting quite a bit of dry air. And as you see this animation from yesterday into early this morning, we can tell that Dorian did not really take advantage of the warmer ocean waters there simply due to that drier air, and has maintained its tropical storm strength. Now, it will be moving over the Lesser Antilles, which are here, and eventually toward the island of Hispaniola, which is a very tall and mountainous island. And that is going to be the trick, to see how much of a direct hit Dorian takes on the island of Hispaniola, because that will disrupt the flow quite a bit. And why I bring this up is that throughout much of the western Atlantic over here in the Gulf of Mexico, our ocean temperatures are more than warm enough to support the development of a powerful tropical system. So using the 51-member ensemble from the European model, current position of Dorian, we can see pretty tightly packed clustering here of the forecast track, taking it right over, first of all, the Lesser Antilles, and then there toward the Greater Antilles, including parts of Puerto Rico, but certainly the island of Hispaniola. The big uncertainty for us is what happens once it gets past that into the Bahamas. Does it continue to go here toward Florida? Certainly there's going to be some higher wind shear values to be contending with. And then does it make the turn and slowly move up the east coast of the United States? That is where I have my greatest concerns at this point for the Carolinas. Now remember, that is way out there in the forecast. We're deep here into the first full week of September before we really understand where this is going. In terms of what we're seeing over the next 5 days, though, I'm going to take you all the way out to Saturday evening, and this is the region that we do have the probability of at least 30 to 40% chance of seeing tropical storm force winds. So there's a big question mark on Dorian, and that is what happens once it gets over the island of Hispaniola, and how does it eventually evolve there? There are even some particular forecast simulations that want to take it into the Gulf of Mexico, and some that want to keep it away from the U.S. coastline. So we're going to have to see exactly where this goes by monitoring it closely throughout this week. Certainly next Monday morning's video, we're we're going to know exactly where it will be at that time. But I want you to tune in to the National Hurricane Center, nhc.noaa.gov, which will give you maps just like this, showing you not only the strength but the projected path of Dorian using the data that they have combined with their historical error analysis. So we can see expected to become a hurricane sitting in here in the parts of the Caribbean, just south of Puerto Rico, but be disrupted, turn back to a tropical storm, and maybe even back into tropical depression by the time it gets out here. This is valid by 8 p.m. on Friday. So this will be something to watch early next week to see where it progresses from there and if it's able to reinvigorate. Watch it very carefully throughout this week. Now, one of the major changes we've seen in the flow of the atmosphere is that the Pacific Ocean has become unblocked. We had seen for a while, well, not a flow pattern like this, which is moving quite quickly. We'd been really stacked up there in the Gulf of Alaska, which is over here, with a high over low over high pattern. That's quite rare. Now what do we have? Well, starting off this week, a deep trough is developing here, which is going to make a low pressure system in through parts of Manitoba that will very slowly migrate east. And it will be dragging a front through the Corn Belt today, bringing in a lot of severe weather. But the question is, how long does it take for that front to make it over to the Carolinas? How much moisture is fed into it? And what's going to be going on with our temperatures? Because today the heat is on in Texas, and it moves back west with time. So we're going to take an in-depth look at those temperatures in a few moments here. Today, like I said, Texas, we have heat advisories and excessive heat warnings out for parts of Texas and Oklahoma. Flood warnings here, but you can see that over on the East Coast, getting into the Carolinas today. No major hazards on the lookout. So this is kind of a welcome sign to be seeing here once we get to this point in August. Severe weather outlook, well, certainly not today for the Carolinas, as all the action is going to be tucked into Illinois, Missouri, parts of Arkansas, Oklahoma, and Kansas. In the day on Tuesday, that'll be about the time where we see the big low sitting here north of the Great Lakes, and the frontal boundary will be pushing over toward the Carolinas and then stretch back up there into parts of Texas. And I'll tell you something, these folks in Texas couldn't be happier that they have a decent chance for some thunderstorms given the drought conditions in that part of the Cotton Belt. Something for us in North Carolina to take note of here. So take a look at it here. We're going to start you off early in the morning here on Monday, and we're going to watch the evolution of these storms moving through parts of the eastern Corn Belt. Broad prefrontal band of precipitation here. The main front is way back here, and that's what's going to light things up across the midsection of the United States. Now, what's important is out ahead of this, look at this. This is now, again, from early Monday morning through much of Monday, we brought a lot of rainfall to some regions that were right in through here that desperately needed to help the corn and soybean crops finish. But as I said, does this make it over to the Carolinas? Well, you can see some widely scattered showers and storms throughout the day on Monday across North Carolina. Very, very widely scattered. Most folks not seeing the rainfall. Into the overnight hours on Monday, we go here into early Tuesday morning. It appears that in the Appalachian Mountains, we're going to get some enhanced lift, giving us some storms in the far western parts of North Carolina in the afternoon on Tuesday into early morning in the afternoon on Monday, early morning on Tuesday. But you do notice that toward the middle of the week, yes, there's a chance for rain that comes through on Tuesday, but it's not like it's widespread rainfall event. And that's because by this time, I've got you all the way out now to Wednesday morning, the front is still draped, right in through this corridor, right in through here as it wraps up around that big low that is tucked away in parts of Canada. The frontal boundary is just elongated and stretched out, and we just don't seem to have the right ingredients to produce much of a threat for severe weather, let alone thunderstorm activity throughout the middle of this week. So this is a relatively drier week on tap despite the presence of this front. Now take a look at what we've got here from our operational European model. I want to play it all for you here so you can kind of get a view of what to expect, but let's take you back to this current system. So moving through the Corn Belt, Monday night into Tuesday morning, when's our best chance at some widely scattered showers and storms midweek through parts of the Carolinas. As that low just skirts off the coast here, doesn't really impact things. And maybe again, Wednesday night, see the frontal boundary? It's right here. That's when we have to watch for some widely scattered showers and storms. Now behind this, high pressure takes over for the end of our week. You can see that big area of high pressure. So relatively drier week on tap for the Carolinas. But you do see the operational model from the European bringing Dorian right here by Saturday afternoon up toward Florida. And then by Sunday, the operational run wants to take it over Florida. And then you can see that it turns it right up the coastline here. Now, please understand, this is an operational run of this model. We get 4 of these every day, and each one will slowly change the progression of the path of Tropical Storm or potentially Hurricane Dorian. But at this point, the uncertainty is quite low to know if by maybe next Tuesday, Wednesday, if it's sitting somewhere here off of the southeast coast of the United States, impacting the Carolinas. Watch it all week long. nhc.noaa.gov. That's the best website to go to monitor this until you get another update from me next Monday. Okay? Total accumulated precipitation. Well, overall, we do see that, again, it's a drier week throughout much of the Carolinas here. This has got you all that to next Monday morning. You can see the first system that's staying offshore here. This is Dorian right in through here. And the main frontal boundaries bringing the heavy rain into parts of the Corn Belt are to our west. So we're not looking at an overly wet week this week in terms of what we're expecting to get out of these next couple of systems here. Now, what are these temperatures going to do? Well, this is pretty interesting to look at. Right now, we have got a deep upper level trough sitting right over the North Pole. And it's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 spokes off of it. Now, generally, when we see a lot of troughs like this across the northern hemisphere, this tends to mean that the pattern keeps moving and it just keeps going around and around. But one of the features we're going to see, and we're looking at here toward this end of this week, is that we're going to continue to see troughing in this part of the United States. And what's interesting is that is really well linked to troughing that is happening here in the Gulf, off of the Aleutian Islands. So this is all the way out to the end of this week. This is basically our day 5 pattern. What about day 10? You see that at that time, ridging really builds up the west coast of the United States and brings a trough here in general across much of the eastern half of North America. And even taking you out to day 15, I still see that trough in place across this area. Now, what do you do with this? Why am I showing you this pattern? Well, this pattern is going to be very important for our temperatures, and certainly in the day on Monday, 80s in the Carolinas. Oh, that's going to feel beautiful. Where's the heat? It's in Texas. Triple-digit heat, some places over 110, and it's building along the southwest and up the west coast. Now, as I click play on this, let's take a look at how our temperatures evolve. In the day on Tuesday, it's going to be a scorcher from Texas all the way through California and Oregon. But take a look at this. North Carolina, still mid-80s for our high temperatures. Getting into Wednesday, this is back more towards seasonable high temperatures, upper 80s, maybe a 90 degree in there. This again is Thursday. What do we see? More 80s, upper 80s, maybe a lower 90 temperature there. Getting you into Friday, much of the same. Saturday, much of the same. And Sunday, much of the same. So really, this is not a week where we're picking up a lot of heat. That's a big break from what we've seen throughout much of summer. And I do want you to notice this. If I step you back to the middle of this week, boy, on Wednesday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, that's Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, we're going to be seeing temperatures in the northern plains here in the 60s and low 70s. And if you're growing corn and soybeans in North Carolina, you need to know how cool the forecast is for the north central plains and the Corn Belt, because they desperately need the heat given the very late planting conditions there. Putting it all together here, take a look at this. This is the next 5 days. You can see where we're split in the country for where the heat will be and where it'll be near average or cooler than average. When we get out here to day 5 through 10, much of the same story across much of the United States. We're just split a little bit more north-south. And even out here to day 10 through 15, what I want you to notice is that same picture is forecast by the GFS model on the right and the European on the left. My point is to tell you that east of the Rocky Mountains, any sort of sustained above average temperatures, well, I have very low confidence in seeing that unless you're in parts of Texas, but you got to get heat. Heat's going to be out here in the west. So this is a cooler pattern that's moving through. And I'll tell you, for those corn and soybean farmers, again, this area right here, we got a lot of farmers that planted very late due to too much rain early. And there's a lot of concern over how this next cool period is going to continue to rob them of their growing degree day units. There's also a lot of concern. A lot of folks are asking me questions. Am I going to see an early frost? Well, let me tell you 2 things about a frost whacking the Corn Belt, okay? We do have cold air already in place. This is the last 30 days of temperature anomalies. You can clearly see that there's some colder air there. But to use that cold air to make a big outbreak of cold air such that you get a frost earlier than normal, we got to get the pattern to build into a huge ridge over Alaska that breaks like this across the Great Lakes states. That produces a large area I'm circling now of higher atmospheric pressure, clears the skies, cools off rapidly at night, and they'll get dinged with the frost. I'm not forecasting that to happen right now. I'm just saying that's what needs to happen. And if that does happen, it is going to change our corn and soybean markets overnight. You're going to see a major shift due to this early frost, okay? So we got to look out for it together. We'll keep you updated on that each week. But overall, temperature's quite pleasant in the Carolinas for the next 10 to 15 days. Quickly giving you some global information here. The warmth that we're going to be seeing this week in Europe will slowly be sliding to the east with time. We're going to have a storm track that takes us from the British Isles up into parts of Scandinavia and also from the Iberian Peninsula into the Mediterranean. Meanwhile, here's the Black Sea, the regions around the Black Sea, especially in parts of the Russian wheat belt in Ukraine. Very dry upcoming week compared to normal. Over to Asia we go. So when we think about what's going on here, I want you to pay close attention to a couple things. We have got three tropical systems to be on the lookout for, one of which is going to hit India pretty hard, enhancing the monsoon. But the other two are going to largely miss this area of China. And that area just circled there is quite a very productive area in China for growing some of the same crops we grow in the Carolinas. North of the Korean Peninsula, looking near average, maybe slightly wetter than average at times. But this area here has been forecast twice in a row for the last 10 days to be dry over the next 10 days. So we're going to keep a close eye on that, as that could be showing up with some impacts here in China. And to finish up, you've heard a lot about the fires going on in South America. Well, this satellite image taken yesterday, each red dot represents one of those fires. And a lot of this is clearing land for agricultural purposes. You can see the smoke that is occupying much of Brazil here. But remember, they're coming off the very end of their dry season. This is the time of year that they typically do a lot of slash and burn into the Amazon. So I'm talking about Rondônia up here. I'm also talking about northern parts of Mato Grosso, which is in here, but it just does stretch right down into the heart of the main Brazilian growing area. So a lot of slash and burn, a lot of fires burning right now in Brazil. And just to show you how dry things are, this website was having a little trouble loading this morning, but the data loaded, but they couldn't shake off the warnings in the background. So let's just take a look at it. This is soil moisture storage in South America. And you can see down here how dry that particular section is. And now the question is, how different from this, from normal is this? And it's not. This is very typical for this time of year to see such a large swath of Brazil far, down here on the very end of the scale in terms of moisture and availability. So we're going to wait for the monsoon to show up. I'll keep you updated about what's happening in Brazil in the coming weeks and months, and we'll just continue to keep you updated on the weather that affects agriculture that hits the Carolinas. All right. With that, I'll wrap it up right there. We at Nutrient Ag Solutions and the Farm Credit Associations in North Carolina want to thank you for your attention. Hope you have a great week, and we'll talk to you soon. Thank you.